Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we're going to talk about statuary and depictions and representations of deities in general, but really specifically of the Wiccan goddess. In Wicca and in paganism more broadly, I don't think I'm overgeneralizing if I say that we are fans of idolatry. We like to have visual representations of our gods, and we place those representations in our homes, on our altars, in our devotional spaces. We make offerings in front of them, etc., right? But we like to have a sort of direct visual or physical point of contact with the deities that we are establishing a relationship with. That's not true of everyone, right? I'm generalizing, but I think broadly speaking, right, there's a reason that you can go on Etsy and find pagan statuary for just about every, major pantheon, and lots of different styles, lots of different depictions of people representing gods from all around the world. And the choice of statuary is a really deeply personal thing. It's about whether a particular representation of a deity makes you feel that god's presence. And different things are going to sort of tickle different people. So what I wanted to do today is just talk a little bit through my own preferences for statuary and for representations, specifically of the Wiccan goddess, and why I have the preferences that I have. I dislike a lot of the statuary that's available, actually. A lot of the cold cast resin, fake bronze stuff, really doesn't appeal to me. There was a time when I was younger that I had a couple of those pieces, largely just because they were kind of the thing that I saw in the rest of the pagan community. They were what a lot of people had, and so I sort of, adopted the taste of the pagan community as a whole. There's a particular kind of pagan aesthetic that you find. And when I was newer to my practice, I sort of leaned into that because it was what I saw everyone else doing. But the aesthetic of it really doesn't sit with me. Those, or also the fake Greek statues, right, the fake marble, that kind of thing. And I think one of the really big reasons is when I think about the Wiccan goddess, when I picture the Wiccan goddess, generally speaking, I don't put a face to her. I don't experience the Wiccan goddess as a human woman. So when I think about the goddess, I think about the moon or the expanse of the cosmos, or standing on the beach looking out at the ocean and just seeing it go as far as the eye can see and realizing how deep the ocean is. And I think about sort of the feeling of the earth beneath me, or watching trees, right? It's, around Beltane, lots of the trees around here have been bursting into flower and growing leaves, and that surge of life and that feeling of life and sort of the world awakening. Those are the things that I associate with the goddess. And when I picture the goddess, those are the sorts of things that I'm picturing, as opposed to a human woman. So when I'm thinking about representations of the goddess that I'm going to keep on my altar or in my home, a lot of the time those very human-looking representations just don't click to me. They look more to me like statues of someone who is dressed up in a costume, as opposed to statues of this vast, transcendent goddess of, life and the moon and nature and all these other, things. The goddess is so big, and I feel like the second we put her in a statue that resembles a human body, we have made her small. And that's entirely just a personal, aesthetic preference, right? That's not theology or something that is true of all of Wicca or anything like that. But I look at a lot of the if you go on Amazon and you just search goddess statue, the cold cast fake bronze ones that are going to come up, where the goddess looks, like a Barbie doll, has the body type of a Barbie doll, and maybe has some flowers in her hair, and is wearing a weird little band across her breasts. And that's just not the goddess to me. So most of the depictions of the goddess, most of the representations of the goddess that I use when I want a physical sort of presence of the goddess on an altar or in a ritual or something like that, they're not human. I have a seashell that I use a lot to represent the goddess. I have an armillary sphere, which is, it's a contraption that sort of is a way of measuring the position of the stars, roughly speaking, or modeling. It doesn't. Anyway, it's like a globe, but it maps the stars instead of the Earth. I have a little sphere of bloodstone that I've used as a goddess representation numerous times before. I have a big sort of cast iron rabbit statue that I use especially around springtime, right? Especially like around the spring equinox, the Easter Bunny, etc., etc., etc. But these are like non-human representations that, to me, are much closer to my experience of who the goddess is. Right? When I see like a Barbie doll holding, flowers and with a deer next to her, that doesn't feel like the goddess to me. But a seashell or sort of a map of the stars or, or a stone sphere, those are things that kind of get at this transcendent feeling that I have about the goddess, that she's like kind of a mystery. She's, she's not kind of a mystery, she is a mystery. But that she is something that is beyond the ability of a human figure or human body to represent. When I was talking to Llewellyn about the cover art for Queen of All Witcheries, it was really important to me that the cover of that book not have any people on it. I wanted it to be a little bit more abstract because the goddess to me doesn't look like a person. And part of that also, I think, is, the second you put a face to the goddess, the second you put her in a particular body, you have limited her to one kind of body. Right, you make her young or old, you make her, you give her a particular ethnicity, you give her a particular body size, and you kind of stick the goddess into a box and say, this is what she looks like, and throw away the rest of it. And first off, just for political reasons, I don't love that, because insofar as the goddess is associated with womanhood, which is absolutely a thing that she's associated with, because I'm a man, that's not one of the most direct ways that I personally relate to her, but it's on the table, no question, right? And insofar as the goddess is associated with womanhood, the goddess is all women. And it feels really uncomfortable to me to pick one particular woman and one particular way that a woman looks and say, this is what the goddess looks like, and screw the rest of you. So I think that's part of why I am often uncomfortable with depictions of the goddess that are anthropomorphic. But the other, the bigger part of it is just that, again, my own personal experience of the goddess is not anthropomorphized in any way, right? My experience of the goddess is the Milky Way galaxy and the planet Earth and the ocean, and those are things that aren't human and aren't human shaped and aren't supposed to be. So if I'm reaching out to the goddess and if I want a representation of her, those are the kinds of things that I'm going to represent to try to catch that. Historically, in the cult of Cybele, the cult of Magna Mater was brought to Rome in order to win a war. The Sibylline oracles had said that you have to bring the cult of the Great Mother into Rome, and if you do that, then the war will be won. And so they sent diplomats off to Turkey and sort of brought the cult of the Great Mother back into Rome proper. But the original cult of the Great Mother in Turkey, who is not exactly the same as the Wiccan goddess, right? Like, the Wiccan goddess is a modern goddess. I wrote a whole book about that. But absolutely, the Lydian cult of the Great Mother is like one of the things that influenced our modern understanding of the goddess. And in that original cult out in what is now modern-day Turkey, they had a sort of a pyramid. They had not quite an obelisk, but they had a cone, I guess is the right word. And that was the representation of the goddess. They didn't have a human-looking statue of her in the temple. They had this geometric plinth that kind of reached for something that a human body wouldn't be able to represent. And that's very much how I feel about representing the goddess. Now, that's a very personal feeling, and that works for me when I'm doing ritual alone or when I'm just like doing private devotion. Most of my ritual gear is still in a storage locker in New Jersey, and I'm going to have to deal with that at some point, but probably not for another several months. So for the time being, the only goddess representation that I have with me is this, which is a moonstone. And like, this is what I keep on my altar, and this is the representation of the goddess that I currently have. But when I'm doing ritual with other people, you sort of have to establish a middle ground, because my own understanding of the goddess is mine, but when you're in ritual with a group of people, you have to establish kind of an intersubjectivity. You have to find a way of representing the goddess and connecting to the goddess that's accessible to everyone in the group. And most people, I think, really prefer slightly more anthropomorphic representations of deity. So if I'm going for a more human-looking representation, a lot of the time I will still opt for something a little more on the abstract side. I have a statue of Diana of Ephesus, which I really love, and that is like, again, it's a human figure, but also she's got all this stuff all across her torso, and like, there's something clearly like not quite human about her. There's something larger than human about her. I also really like sort of the geometric cycladic goddesses. I really like the spiral goddess statues. You know, the ones that are like, just because they are more abstract and less kind of confined to a particular kind of limited conception of the goddess as a human body. And then in terms of, materials, I try to avoid resin. I try to avoid plastic and the cold cast bronze. It just feels kind of cheap to me. It feels kind of fake to me. A lot of the time, I really like wooden statues. I've done a video before about how I think like the term nature or natural is a fraught and kind of troublesome term that pagans tend to use uncritically. But at the same time, like, as critical as I am of that terminology, I still buy into it, right? It's still important to me in this like nature goddess cult to be representing the goddess with natural materials. And that can mean stones, but really what I prefer is something that has been alive. So something like wood that, has lived and has died and has been shaped into a new form. That to me feels really appropriate for sort of the mother goddess who is the source of life. Again, that's just like a personal aesthetic preference. That's not Wiccan theology. But if I'm going to be sort of representing the goddess with something that looks a little bit more human, a like kind of vaguely abstract like spiral goddess or Nile goddess or, even a Willendorf style is more the kind of thing that I tend to prefer. And as far as materials go, I really prefer something like wood, and then if wood is not available, then carved stone is kind of my next bet. So yeah, just kind of like I wish I had lots of things that I could like pull out and lift up and show as I was doing this video. It would make it a lot more engaging, but like I say, everything I have is in storage except for the moonstone. So this is keeping me going. But that's kind of all I have for today. Yeah. If you watched and if you have thoughts, I would love to hear about the kinds of preferences that you have for representations of deity, either the Wiccan goddess or other gods. What are the kinds of considerations that kind of strike your aesthetic fancy in representing deity, and why? Why do those things matter to you? So, all right, thank you so much. I'll catch you soon.